often hear or sometimes use this term a rat or a snake in the grass. There are times when we have situations we know when we see or hear something that is evil and we go and address the person and we know that what they are doing is wrong and we need to go and report it. Not in any malice or in any way just to be nosy or in our own colloquial to be fast. That is not it. It is when something is totally needs to be reported because it is just wrong. Now, on the other hand, there are people who are just nosy and they see things and they use that bit of information not because they want to be bearer of good news or to be bearers of news that will help or to bring good out of a situation. No, there are some people who use that information and use it to their advantage so that they themselves can benefit, and no matter what the outcome, it's going to destroy people or it's going to cause more hurt than good. They will use it to their advantage for what they can get from the information. These are what you call rats or snakes in the grass. Good morning, saints, and welcome to the Dixon's Devotions. Today we are going to be looking at Psalms chapter 52. Psalms chapter 52, an interesting psalm. The title of this psalm indicated that this psalm is a psalm of David, written to the chief musician in Mishkal. Now, as I said before, if you look at Psalms chapter 32, Mishkal means a psalm of instruction, a psalm of understanding, a psalm that is played to be informed, to gain knowledge. As a matter of fact, Mishkal here is written in the Hiphel stem. Now, Hebrew have 8 tense stem and they have different variation. Some of it is subjective, is it objective, some who is the action, who is doing the action, how the action is done, and all this kind of thing, what voice, passive voice, whatever, middle voice, active voice, all of that is involved in these stems. Now the Hiphel stem is a causative stem, cause. So here in Mishkal, which is the Hebrew word shalak, salak means, in the Hiphel it means cause to understand. David is saying, I want you to understand, I'm going to cause you to understand a situation here. Now, the background to this psalm, Psalms chapter 52, as it said, when Doeg, the Edomite, came and told Saul that he saw David in the house of Ahimelech, the high priest. Now, David was running from Saul, and he ran from Saul and he ended up by Ahimelech, the high priest, and Ahimelech lived in the area of Benjamin. Now he was a priest, and David and his soldiers went there and they were hungry, and they asked Ahimelech if he had food. And Ahimelech the high priest was trembling because he wanted to know why David come to him, because David was on the run, and Saul particularly gave instruction, if they see, to Ahimelech and all of them, if they see David, make sure you tell me that you see David. But Ahimelech was frightened when David came and he said, look, I don't have any food. The only bread we have is the bread that is in the presence of God. Now there were 2 loaves of bread that's supposed to be in the presence, in the Ark of the Covenant, in the house of God. and the priests were to go and change it almost every day, and that was the only bread. But David men were hungry, and Ahimelech went and he gave it to them. Ahimelech said, but they can only eat it, they should not be interfere with women for a while. And David said, hey, we had no time to interfere with women because we're on the run all the time. So he went and gave them the bread from the presence to eat. Now while they were there was an Edomite, a man named Doeg. Doeg, the Bible said, was there when they came to Ahimelech the high priest, and the Bible said Doeg was there for a while in the presence of God. So you see, Doeg was a religious man. And there are many people in church disguise themselves under the guise of religion and make themselves feel like that they're such a religious person when there are rats and snakes in the grass. So here it was, Doeg was there, and he heard and he saw everything. And it came to a point where in chapter 22 of, you can see the story in 1 Samuel in chapter 22, when Saul was looking for David, and David ran from Ahimelech's house, and he and his men, they went to the cage of Absalom, and you know, they went down to Achish, and they were hiding and so on. And Saul was at a particular area, and while he was there, he had his soldiers around him, and Saul felt like his soldiers weren't loyal to him. And Saul said to them, he was in the middle and he had his sword in his hand and his soldiers around him. He said, you all are not loyal to me, you know. You all protecting David, that's his army that was with him. You all are protecting David, and you all see how my son, Jonathan, aligned himself with that traitor David. And while he was there now, Doeg was in the presence, and Doeg said, oh Saul, I saw David, he was by Ahimelech, and Ahimelech fed him. And Saul was outraged, and he said, what, let's go down to the house of Ahimelech. And he went down to the house of Ahimelech, and he called out Ahimelech, and he said, didn't I tell you if David passed this way, make sure you report it? And Ahimelech did not report it, and everything like that. So as a result of that, Saul told his soldiers, kill Ahimelech and his family. But the soldiers, them refused because they did not want to kill a priest of God, and they know Ahimelech was a priest of God, and they refused. And Saul went to Doeg and said, Doeg, you kill them. And Doeg went and slaughtered Ahimelech and his entire family in the village. 82 or 84 people he killed on that day. Doeg, he was a wicked man, and he used Saul's his information as an informant to Saul. But remember, Doeg was a rich man. He was over, the Bible said, the herds of Saul. So he was rich and he was wealthy. So he used Saul to get what he wanted. But in some translation, he was over the house of Saul donkeys. That's what herd means. But this thing about it, Ahimelech, Doeg was very rich, but he used the information to his advantage, to gain advantage, and he killed out all of Ahimelech family, except one of them escaped, Abiathar the priest, and he went and aligned himself with David. And David felt so bad because he was there by the house of Ahimelech, and they were so nice to him that he caused his presence caused the death of Ahimelech and his family. But Doeg did it. He was very, very, very cunning, crafty, and deceitful, and advantageous. And that is what you call a rat or a snake in the grass. They do things not for the good or for the benefit, but they do things because they want to get advantage. And because of that, Saul saw Doeg of one of his faithful men, even more faithful than his soldiers. So you know that Doeg is going to get appointed more blessings from Saul, and that's why he did it. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of snakes and rats in the grass. It's not because they're reporting something because it's the right thing to do. They use the information for their advantage and for the well-being at the hurt and the cause of others. These are what you call a rat and snakes in the grass. But before we go any further, if you like the content on this YouTube channel, please remember to subscribe, like, leave a comment, and tell a friend about our YouTube channel. Now let's get into the text. As I said, based on the heading for the chief director, a psalm of David regarding the time Doeg the Edomite said to Saul, David has gone to see Ahimelech. This psalm is outlined in two sections, from verse 1 to verse 5, outlining or describing the character of a snake in the grass, a rat in this grass, and from verse 6 to verse 9, explain the outcome or the downfall of the rat in the grass, as opposed to the blessing and the elevation of God's people, or a true servant of God. Now let's look at verse 1. Now in verse 1 it said, why do you boast about your crimes, great warrior? So here it is, David is confronting Doeg. You boast about your crime. First of all, you spread false information. You rat out on a priest of God who was doing the right thing, and you went and murdered him, and you're boasting about your crime. So here, when we look at the situation in 1 Samuel chapter 21 from verse 1, and in 1 Samuel chapter 22, we see right here, David is this from verse 20 right down, David is describing the character of Doeg. It's not a matter of he tells Saul in Psalms chapter 52, he gives you the nature of Doeg. First of all, he boasts about his crime. That's the kind of person he was. Do you realize God's justice continues forever? Doeg, you went and killed a priest, the family, and also the entire village for your own praise and your own self-advancement, a Doeg, and you boast about it. Verse 2, all day long you plot destruction. So when he said that he plot the destruction, he had it. Doeg had this plot. Yes, I am going to Saul. Now he realized that Saul's own army is not reporting to him, because they know what Saul was doing was wrong. But Doeg decided, you know what? This is an advantage for me to get elevated and to get more blessings from Saul. So he went and rat out Ahimelech, knowing what Saul will do to Ahimelech, knowing the kind of man Saul was. But instead of protecting the priest of God, he went and he did not care. Once he was satisfied and he got what it wanted from Saul. Verse 2, all the day long you plot destruction. Your tongue cuts like a sharp razor. You are an expert at telling lies. Yes, he went and said he saw David, but he embellished it. He put on more on it. He lied. He put more lies to it. He telling of truth for Saul, but he also put on a lot of it. And that's what rats are, and that's what snakes in the grass, that's what they do. You love evil more than good, and lies more than truth. And this is what happened. He embellished it. Sometimes you see people buy a sim, and he do this, and he do that, and he do that, and they put on more than the actual event. And he spread a bad information to Saul and Ahimelech and also David. And David said he loved truth more than lie. He was deceitful and deceptive. Verse 4, you love to destroy others with your words. Doeg loved to destroy others with his words. You liar. I like how David said exclamation. You liar with his words. He brought down Ahimelech and his family. With his words, he was a liar. He had more to it. And the interesting thing about it, when we read chapter 21 verse 1, and when David came to Ahimelech, Diog was in the presence of God. He was in the house praying, acting religious, and he stayed in there for a while. And the point is not that he was in the house for a while, He stayed there and listened everything that was going on in the house of God, acting pious like his dear. But David identified him, and David said later on, if you look in 1 Samuel chapter 22 and recognize what happened, David said, I knew when I saw Diog. That's why David asked, do you have a sword here? David came and he didn't have any sword, he was running. And Ahimelech had this sword that David cut off Goliath's neck right there. And he said, only your sword, it was wrapped. Give it to me, it's a good sword. Because David took the sword, and David knew that when he saw Diog, he knows something was up. He couldn't trust Diog, so he tell his friends, his army, let's go, let's move. He didn't say, but later on he said, I know when I saw Diog there, he would inform Saul. And that's exactly what happened. But God will strike you down once for all. Verse 5, he will pull you from your home and uproot you from the land of the living. David said, man, but you're going to meet your day, man. God sees all. You went, tell lies on the man. You informed, the man was doing the right thing. Saul was a madman. Instead, you protect the priest of God. Even Saul's army. When Saul went down to the house of Ahimelech and tell his army to kill Ahimelech and his family, they refused. But Diog decided, okay then, I'm going to kill all of them. And he not only killed Ahimelech's house, he killed the entire village. Only one escaped, Abiathar the priest. Look at that. That himself Saul's army dared to do such a thing, but Diog went and killed all of them. Not only that, he cut with lies, but he cut in action too. He was a deceitful and wicked man. Only he wanted his advantage, because at the end of the day, what Saul would have done, appoint him over that area, and that's what he wanted. Verse 6, David said, God is going to uproot you, man. God see everything. Look at verse 6 now. This is where the outcome, we saw the character of the snake in the grass. Now we're going to see the outcome of the snake in the grass. The righteous will see it and be amazed. Even the righteous will say, boy, how could the man go and just kill a priest of God? A just man? And not only that, his entire family, the Bible says, wife and children. And the village, 82 people, Diog one kill that day. And the Bible said the righteous will look at this and be amazed. They will laugh and say, look what happened to mighty warriors. When people become so mighty and they feel so powerful, especially when they have authority under somebody, they become executor and a judge and executioner. They become so mighty and so powerful. And no, in the realms of politics, I see that a lot. Sometimes politician wins and they appoint somebody under them, whether a secretary, whether somebody in the cabinet a little higher, and a minister who hired somebody under them, as somebody, and that person come worse than the minister itself. They feel like they can do. They come like they're the henchman. And so it was with Diog. And look at what he said. You mighty warrior. The righteous said, but watch how a mighty warrior turn now. Look what happens to mighty warriors. Look at that. Who do not trust in God. And here it is. Diog was in the presence of God. There's a lot of people go to church for sure. They ain't serious. Acting outside pious and all of them looking for news to carry out and use it to their advantage, and they become tale bearers, gossipers. And this is what Diog was. He wasn't really, his heart was not, he was religious, but his heart was not with God. How could he do such evil thing? Look at what the Bible said. Look what happened to mighty warriors. Look at that. Who do not trust in God. Look at that. They trust their wealth instead and go more and more bold in their wickedness. And so it was with Diog. Verse 8, but I am like an olive tree. Now this is the blessings of God to those who trust Him. But I am like an olive tree, thriving in the house of God. You see, the true man of God will strive in the house of God like an olive tree. But those people who are in the house of God, who are pretenders, they're people that go to church to get what they want, for advantage, for the church to give them what they want. And a lot of people, when you go to church, you hear them, Lord bless me. Nothing wrong with blessing. It's all about them. Lord bless me with this, bless me with that, bless me with that. And that's all they're for. And they do not care. And there's some people who just use religion to their advantage. And this is a Diog. There are many Diogs in church. But the true ones will stand up like an olive tree, thriving in the house of God. Verse 8. And I will always trust in God's unfailing love. I will praise you forever, O God, for what you have done. I will trust in your good name in the presence of your faithful people. A true man of God would not do what Diog just did. Slaughter, went in there and slaughter the priest of God and his entire family and the entire village. Bring down the city, bring down the church, bring down the community, because they only want money and it's only for their own self. There are a lot of Diogs in the church, and remember, watch people who bring information to you. Consider the source. Watch people who bring information to you. Consider the source. There are some people, saints, there are a lot of people who act like Christian and thing, but there are a bunch of Diogs. Watch them. And we saw the outcome of Diogs. Snakes in the grass, there are a rat in the grass, are rats in the house. They rat out and there are snakes. Saints, make sure that you are not a Diog, and when you spot a Diog, highlight them, stay away from them. And if you have the Diog attitude in you, watch it. Watch it. As I said before, you're not a rat if there's something wrong and evil that needs to be reported in the right way, because if you don't do it, it causes more hurt. But you come a Diog, a rat, a snake in the grass when you use information to bring down others. When you know when you do it, it's going to cause more harm than good. And you go and do it just because you're going to get something out of it. That is a snake in the grass, and that is a Diog. Saints, I pray that this might not be reported of any of us. And I pray that you will have a wonderful day, and may the Lord's blessings be with you.